Hi, it's Liz and we are at EMO's Creative Studio, where everything you create is beautiful because you created it. So here we are. This is part 4 of my journey video on how I'm making a rag quilt. And in part 3 you saw me put together the rows, the blocks, and then the rows. And I ended up having, what, 8 rows instead of 10 because that would have made it really long, and all I wanted is to cover me when I'm on the chair. So today we're going to conclude with sewing the border all the way around. I've got to put an inch seam allowance border all the way around the 4 corners, and then we're going to cut it, do the ragging. Then it's going to get washed, dried, and then you will see the conclusion of this rag quilt. So how about we get started? So now I have this big giant quilt that I now have to sew the edges around. It's big, it's going to be big and bulky. And the reason I'm sewing the edges around the edges is so that when I go to rag cut it, or cut it into the strips, or fringe it, I'm going to cut up to the stitch line and not into the batting that's in between the top and the bottom layer. So again, this is going to be a 3/4 to an inch seam allowance right here. If you can see it right here. And again, I'm kind of using the edge of this where the quarter mark is as my guideline. I'm going to start at the very top. I'm not going to backstitch because the stitches are going to all be locked in place. So let me put it down. Did I tell you that I love my walking foot? So I'm going to sew a little bit, let you see me sew a little bit how I struggle with this large quilt in this small sewing space. All right, here we go. Now you notice I don't have to mess around with any pins or anything. And again, for me, in my sewing, I'm going to open up my seam allowance and sew it open. As you can see here, it's going to take me a while because I'm going to have to fight with this quilt. But I want you to see how I sew a couple of the blocks on this side of the quilt. Just frustrations of trying to sew in a small place. Remember, I'm going to have my stiletto to one side so that I can hold down my edges. I also made sure that my needle was still in place by using the screwdriver and tightening the screw, which I did before I started sewing. So you see what I'm doing with this, how I'm sewing it. So I'm going to go off camera and do the 4 sides, and I'll come back to you in a... And now we are at the end of sewing the border, or all around the edges of this rag quilt. It was a little bit of a hassle because it's so bulky and I have limited space in my sewing area right here. So I'm done sewing all the edges all the way around, 3/4 to a quarter, 3/4 of an inch to an inch all the way around, all 4 edges. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig out my scissors. I'm going to find a comfortable spot, turn on the TV, and I'm going to start ragging the edges. And I'm going to show you that process. Okay. Okay, I've set myself up in a comfortable position. I'm showing you the scissors that Baxter is here helping me show you the scissors that I purchased. I mentioned this earlier in the part 1, I believe, of this journey video. These are Fiskars, and these are spring-loaded. You can see the spring right there. And the spring helps you with the cutting process. It helps you not get tired when you're cutting and cutting and cutting. Now this is Baxter. This is my 7.5-month-old baby. He likes to be everywhere. He's kind of like a rescue. I rescued him from humans that were very old. They had hearing problems, they didn't get around much, and they kind of abused him because of how old they were. Nothing bad about them. He just came to our house. We set eyes on each other, and it was love at first sight. So this is my buddy Baxter, and you might see him in some of them. Okay, so I'm in a comfortable spot that I'm going to show you how I'm going to rag. You clip to the stitching every 1 or so, no more than 1 inch apart. Oh, and this one got sewn together, but that's okay. So let's see if you can see right here. I'm going to start clipping, clipping, clipping. I don't go beyond the sewing line. I keep on clipping and clipping, clipping. When I get to the corner, I clip, and then I clip again, and then that piece comes out like this. See? So let me show you the clipping. Clipping, clipping. Now let me show you over here in this section right here where your seams are sewn open. Cut on the side of each seam. I know it looks a little weird. Cut it open on this side. Cut it open. Cut it open. And now I've got the seam, the two blocks, their seam allowance together. Now I can go ahead and clip them together. I can cut them when they're together. Again, you want to use a good pair of sharp scissors, and if you don't go out and get these spring-loaded scissors, make sure that you use your dominant hand, because you are going to get tired. You're going to get annoyed and aggravated. So this, I'm showing you right here, this is what the ragging looks like, and once you put it in the wash and the dryer, it'll fluff up and look really nice. I'm going to time myself to see how long it'll take for me to clip open these, make the ragging on this quilt, and I'll get back to you. All right. So we're at 1 hour and 5 minutes later, and this blanket is totally ragged all the way around. Every block is done. So with the washing cycle that I have and the drying cycle that I have, it's going to take about 2 hours for me to wash this and dry it. So let me throw it into the wash, into the dryer, and I'll come back and show you what the completed finished product looks like. And here we are. I've got both blankets washed and dried. They ragged out really nice. Let me blow it up for you to see. Let me see right here. Nice and ragged out really well. Over here. They turned out pretty neat, pretty nice. And now we come to the conclusion of my journey video as you watch me make my rag quilts, 2 of them, one for the car and one for my chair. And you saw my happiness and frustration as I worked through the different parts of making this quilt. I hope you can join me for other journey videos. Until then, I'm Liz. We are at EMO's Creative Studio, where anything you create is beautiful because you create it. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Until the next time, happy quilting, happy sewing. Take care. Bye.